Okay, in this video, I'm going to go through a few things in this article by Moriarty. Do CEOs get paid too much? So first, just looking at the first page, 618, we have here in the second column, 3 views of what makes a wage just. And this can be wages for anything, but of course, we're focused here on CEOs. So the first one is the agreement view. Just price, in this case, a salary for a CEO, is obtained through an arm's length negotiation between an informed buyer and an informed seller. Okay, so an arm's length negotiation is when the buyer and the seller act independently and they have no relationship. There's no relationship between them. They're totally independent. The seller is trying to get the best price for him or herself, and the buyer is trying to get the best price for him or herself. Okay, then the second view is the desert view, and it's desert, not desert. And here the view is that just wage is based on what a person deserves. Okay, and then finally there's the utility view, that is the usefulness of having a wage at a certain place. And the idea here is that a just wage is the wage that's going to maximize usefulness. In particular, in this case, it's going to incentivize people to do the best possible job. Okay, now on 619, I'm going to go through what's in this first column here. So Moriarty writes, too often in discussions of executive compensation, the separateness of these views is overlooked. But if we do not distinguish among them, we run the risk of talking past each other. And then he's got P's belief and Q's belief. This is kind of a philosopher's way of talking. P and Q are just different people. It could be Joe and Mary, but for whatever reason, this is kind of the way that it's often put in philosophy articles. So P's belief that CEOs do not deserve by any standard of deservedness $8 million per year may lead him to the conclusion that CEOs make too much money. Q's belief that the pay negotiations between CEOs and owners are fair may lead him to the conclusion that CEOs do not make too much money. In fact, both P and Q may agree that CEOs do not deserve $8 million per year and that the pay negotiations between CEOs and owners are fair. But they simply disagree about what is morally more important, desserts or agreements. Understanding this, of course, does not solve the debate, but it does help to clarify what it might be about. Okay, so again, we got 2 people, P and Q. Actually, I have this for you. Okay, so P, do CEOs deserve $8 million per year? No. Q, do CEOs deserve $8 million per year? No. Are CEO pay negotiations fair? P, yes. Q, yes. Okay, so they agree about all of this. The basis for a just wage, P thinks that is deservedness. So over here, that's a no. So therefore, $8 million is not a just wage for CEOs. The basis for a just wage for Q is fair negotiation. And so we look over here, and so Q is going to think that $8 million per year is a fair wage or a just wage for CEOs. Okay, back to this. To solve the debate about CEO pay, we must determine which view of justice in wages is correct. It is unlikely, for reasons given below, that agreement theorists, desert theorists, and utility theorists will all come to the same conclusion about how much CEOs should be paid. I will not try to do this here. There's a deep disagreement about the relative importance of these values. A full defense of one of them against the others is beyond the scope of this paper. Fortunately, it is not necessary to determine which view of justice in wages is correct to draw any conclusions about CEO pay. That is, even without determining which of these 3 views is the correct one or is the best one, even without doing that, we still can draw a conclusion about CEO pay. And that's what Moriarty is going to do. Below, I will argue that its current level cannot be justified by the agreement view, the desert view, or the utility view. No matter which one is correct, CEOs get paid too much. Okay, so this last sentence here, no matter which one is correct, CEOs get paid too much, is the overall conclusion for this article, for Moriarty's full argument. Okay, so then the outline for the rest of his article is he's going to go through each of these 3 views. So he goes through the agreement view, starting on page 619. He does the dessert view beginning at the bottom of 620. And then the utility view is page 622 to 625. Okay, so in each case, he's going to explain what the view is, how it applies. And in each case, he's going to argue that $8 million per year is not a just wage according to that view. So then again, since $8 million per year is not a just wage according to any of the three views, no matter how we think we should justify a just wage, it shouldn't be $8 million per year, according to Moriarty. Okay, next, I'm going to go through page 621 and 622. So this is in the section where he discusses the dessert view. So in the first column of 621, he writes, determining how much CEOs deserve involves us in two difficulties. The first is identifying the standard or standards for deservedness. Above, I noted that economic contribution is often taken to be the basis of desert of wages, but a variety of others have been offered, including the physical effort exerted by the worker, the amount of ability, skill, or training his job requires, its difficulty, stress, dangerousness, or unpleasantness, and its degree of responsibility or importance. Desert may be determined by one or several of these factors. Okay, so we can use any of these for any kind of job to think about how much a person deserves to be paid. Obviously, some are going to fit better with other jobs than others. The physical effort exerted by the worker probably isn't going to apply to determining how much CEOs deserve, but it might work for some other job. So desert may be determined by one or several of these factors. The second problem is connected to the first. Once we identify the desert base or bases for wages, then we must find a way of matching the desert levels to pay levels. Suppose contribution is the basis of desert, and suppose as a direct result of key decisions by the CEO, the firm's profits increase by 20% in a year. We might think that the CEO's desert level increased by 20%, and therefore that he deserves a 20% raise. But what should his initial salary have been? Without a way of matching desert levels to pay levels, we cannot answer this question. However, from the point of view of desert, the absolute amount of the CEO's pay raise matters as much as its percent increase. Okay, so that's that would be kind of an obvious way of determining how much a CEO deserves to get paid, the next year, depending on how much better the firm did in the previous year, but we still need some way of determining what the CEO deserves just as a base salary. Okay, so Moriarty continues, for the purpose of this paper, both of these problems may be avoided. The first questions are ability to identify the bases of desert. In response, I will assume, as most parties to the debate about CEO pay do, that the basis for desert of pay is contribution. Okay, so that's referring back to what we were talking about up here. The CEO deserves a certain amount based on what his or her contribution to the performance of the firm is. Indeed, of all the desert bases mentioned above, this is the one most likely to justify the current level of CEO pay. The second questions are ability to identify what it is exactly that people deserve. In response, I will not argue that CEOs deserve to make less than $8 million per year absolutely. Instead, I will argue that they deserve to make less than $8 million per year, given that their employees make on average $27,000 per year. CEOs are not 301 times more deserving as their employees. Under the assumption that contribution is the sole desert base for pay, the CEO deserves to be paid 301 times what the average worker is paid if and only if his contribution is 301 times as valuable as the worker's. For every $1 in revenue the worker generates, the CEO must generate $301. If the worker generates $100,000 in a year, the CEO must generate $30.1 million. Does this happen? Okay, so this is a question that we're going to be thinking about for the rest of this column. Okay, so the first response is, some will deny that this question can be answered. They will say that employees are not Robinson Crusoes, that is, they're not individuals stranded alone on a desert island or anywhere else, each at work on their own self-contained projects. Instead, many people work together on the same complex projects. As a result, it is difficult or impossible to tell where one person's contribution ends and the other begins. This is not, of course, an objection that will be advanced by those who appeal to the desert view to justify the current level of CEO pay. Okay, so if you're not Moriarty, but you're someone else who's saying, $8 million per year on average is a just wage, and it's a just wage because that's what CEOs deserve based on their contribution, then you're not going to say what's in this paragraph here, that we can't actually tell how much a CEO or any other employee contributes. So this is a response, but it's not going to be a response that's given by the person whom Moriarty is arguing against. Okay, so this is not, of course, an objection that will be advanced by those who appeal to the desert view to justify the current level of CEO pay. They need a way to measure contribution accurately. If the stronger form of this objection is true, however, and we cannot tell how much each employee contributes to the firm, then we cannot tell how much each deserves to be paid. So this conclusion is not unwelcome from the point of view of this paper. That is, it's not unwelcome from what Moriarty is trying to argue, nevertheless, but it is weak, even from the point of view that he's trying to argue. A thoroughgoing skepticism about the accuracy of contribution measurements yields the conclusion that we cannot tell whether CEOs deserve to make 301 times as much as their employees, not that they do not deserve to make this much. As far as this view is concerned, CEOs may deserve to make more than 301 times as much as their employees. But according to this view, where we can't tell what any one person contributes, we'll never know. Okay, but this kind of skepticism about the accuracy of contribution measurements is, I believe, unwarranted. Although it may be impossible to determine exactly how much each employee contributes to the firm, rough estimates are possible. The popular view, of course, is that CEOs matter enormously to their firms. The CEOs of successful corporations are glorified in news stories and biographies. Witness, for example, the flurry of books written by and about Jack Welch, the former chief executive of General Electric. If we accept this view, we will conclude that CEOs' contributions are at least 301 times as valuable as that of their employees. So this is so going back up to here, if the worker generates 100,000 in a year, the CEO must generate 30.1 million, or just, whatever it is, the ratio has to be 301 times more contribution by the CEO. Does this happen? Okay, so the first response was, well, we can't actually answer this question. The second response is CEOs matter enormously to their firm. So the second answer is yes, although that's not the one that Moriarty is ultimately going to agree with. Oops. Okay, so where do we leave this? So if we accept this view, we will conclude that CEOs' contributions are at least 301 times as valuable as their employees. Okay, that's the answer to the question above. But we should not conclude this. So this is Moriarty's view. To be sure, some scholars endorse the popular view, but an increasing number reject it. Summarizing the current state of the debate, Khurana says, the overall evidence points to, at best, contingent and relatively minor cause and effect relationship between CEOs and firm performance. He explains a variety of internal and external constraints inhibit CEOs' abilities to affect firm performance, including internal politics, previous investments in fixed assets, the particular market's organizational norms, and external forces such as competitive pressures and barriers to exit and entry. It cannot be denied that CEOs' decisions at times make a difference to firm performance. These leaders may deserve bonuses for strategic thinking, but if Khurana is right, cases such as these are exceptions to the rule. Factors outside of the CEO's control normally contribute more to the firm's success than the CEO does. Some will reject this research on which this result is founded. That is, Moriarty's referred to this research that Khurana has done, but some may reject this research. Others will point out that it is compatible with the claims that CEOs contribute 301 times as much to their firms as their employees. That is, taking Khurana's research as being correct, as being accurate, that CEOs don't contribute that much to their firm's performance. It still may be the case that CEOs contribute 301 times as much as their firms as their employees. Okay, these claims are not irrational. No theorist is willing to say exactly how much compared with the average employee the average CEO contributes, but they are unreasonable. There is mounting evidence that CEOs are not as important as they were once thought to be, and average employees are far from useless. We have ample evidence for a negative conclusion, namely the claim that CEOs deserve to be paid 301 times as much as their employees is unjustified. But I think the evidence licenses a tentative positive conclusion as well, namely the CEOs are less than 301 times as deserving as their employees, and so deserve less than 301 times as much pay. The desert view clearly does not support and probably condemns the current level of CEO pay. Okay, so that's the second view, and then the third view is the utility view, and there's just one thing I want to talk about. Okay, so for the utility view, and this view says that a just wage for a CEO is one that maximizes firm wealth by attracting, retaining, and motivating a talented leader. Okay, so then Moriarty splits it into attracting and retaining, so $8 million per year. So according to this view, $8 million per year is needed to attract and retain a good person. And then, so like this would be a different version of the view, or maybe it could be combined, but let's just say it's a different version. 8 million per year. According to this view, 8 million per year is needed to properly motivate a CEO. Okay, but I want to point out one thing back in the attraction and retention part. So here at the bottom, Moriarty says there is no evidence that offering 8 million per year is necessary to get talented people to become CEOs. Indeed, we have reason to believe that much less will do. Consider the jobs of university presidents and U.S. military generals. They are no less difficult and require, so those jobs are no less difficult and require no less skill and training than the jobs of CEOs, but the wages offered to presidents and generals, that is university presidents and military generals, are many times lower than the wages offered to CEOs. The median compensation of university presidents of private research universities is $385,000 per year. That's from 2003, I guess. Let's see what we got here. In 2014, it's a little bit over $500,000. U.S. military generals earn $143,000 per year. Despite this, there is no shortage of talented university presidents and military generals. The fact that people can be attracted to difficult, specialized, and high-skill managerial jobs that pay only several $100,000 per year suggests that talented people will still want to become CEOs even if they are paid less than $8 million per year. Okay, so then on the rest of this page, Moriarty goes through 3 objections. And so I'm just going to go through the first one to kind of show you how Moriarty goes through it. Okay, so the first one, well, it begins here. It might be admitted that the CEO's job is about as difficult and requires about as much skill and training as the university president's job or the military general's job, but it might be said the CEO's job is in one important way more unpleasant than these jobs. Military generals get, in addition to a paycheck, the satisfaction of knowing that they are protecting their country. University presidents get, in addition to a paycheck, the satisfaction of knowing that they are helping to increase human understanding. There is no comparable benefit, according to this objection, for CEOs. Okay, so to review, 8 million is, so the idea is, according to this view, 8 million per year on average is needed to attract and retain good people. Moriarty is saying, well, no, you can attract and retain good people to similar kinds of jobs by paying them much less. University presidents and U.S. generals, for instance, those jobs attract, good people with more or less the same skill set, and it doesn't take as much money to attract them and retain them in those jobs. Okay, then the objection against Moriarty is, well, those jobs, university presidents and military generals have, in addition to however much money they're paying the people to do them, they also come with these other, let's say, intrinsic rewards. There's, something about the job that makes it worthwhile, and the CEO job doesn't have it. So by this view, the CEO job, the only value in being a CEO is the money. There's no other benefit to doing it. Okay, so that's the objection. There's no comparable benefit according to this objection for CEOs. Okay, then Moriarty's response to that objection is in this paragraph here. First, he says, I suspect that many CEOs find their jobs immensely intrinsically rewarding. That is, they're rewarding just, the job is rewarding in and of itself. and they would find the suggestion mildly insulting. That is, that they only do the job for the money and not because they like it or value the job for what it is. But let us grant for the sake of argument that CEOs' jobs are less intrinsically rewarding than university presidents and military generals' jobs. Are they that much less rewarding? As many as 21 times so. For the objection to succeed, they would have to be, but it is implausible to suppose that they are, while the extra unpleasantness of the CEO's job may make it necessary to offer more than $385,000 per year to attract talented candidates. It is hardly plausible to suppose that it makes it necessary to offer $8 million. Okay, so even if, because the CEO job is less rewarding in and of itself than the university president's job or the military general's job, even if it is, so even if the CEO job is less rewarding, it's not that much less rewarding that you have to offer $8 million as compared to these amounts up here, $385,000 or $143,000. Okay, so the main thing I want to point out to you there just is what Moriarty is doing on this page. There's first the objection, his response to the objection, and then he's going to go through the second objection and the third one. Okay, and the third objection's over here. Okay, so, but I'm not going to read those. Just the last thing then I'll point out to you. So just to go over the conclusion. Okay, so Moriarty's conclusion. First, he's just summarizing what he's done. To structure the debate about executive compensation, I distinguish three views of justice and wages: the agreement view, the desert view, and the utility view. No matter which one is right, I argued, the CEO pay is too high. Owners may agree to pay CEOs $8 million per year. So, of course, owners of the firm are the shareholders, and they may, that is, quote unquote, agree to pay CEOs $8 million per year. But the negotiations are not conducted at arm's length. That is, they're not conducted by two independent parties that are looking out for their own self-interest. If they were, CEOs would be paid less. The evidence suggests that CEOs do not deserve to make 301 times what workers make. That's, of course, the desert view. And that paying CEOs $8 million per year does not maximize firm wealth. That would be the utility view. New evidence may emerge that challenges these conclusions. Alternatively, new theories of justice and wages may be developed. Until then, it is reasonable to believe that CEO pay is too high. Down here at the very bottom and at the end of the whole article, in the meantime, what should be done? CEO pay should be kept from increasing. This is Moriarty's answer about what should be done. CEO pay should be kept from increasing. Ideally, it should decrease. Space considerations prevent a detailed discussion of how this can be accomplished. I conclude, however, with two preliminary suggestions. First, CEOs should be removed from the director election process. So you recall that is referring to what Moriarty discussed when he was going through the agreement view. And then second, directors should be required to make meaningful investments in the firms that they direct. This promotes the first objective. Directors will feel more obligated to shareholders if they are themselves shareholders. It is useful for another reason as well. Above, we said that a problem with the pay negotiations between directors and CEOs is that the directors feel as if they are not paying with their own money. Making them buy stock would help to ameliorate this problem. An implication of this view is that other kinds of compensation that seem free to directors should be eliminated. This includes stock options insofar as they are not counted against firm earnings. If options are given as compensation, they should be expensed. Okay, so of course you should read the full article, and if you have any questions, you can contact me.